is going to solve, what it's asking us to do is to find our missing lengths and angles. All right? Well, I'm going over one thing in my geometry class with my students, and they keep on forgetting all the angles in a triangle always add up to, Haley? 180, right? It's like to you now, it's like, oh, 180, 180, because you've been doing a lot. But them, for the geometry students, they quickly forget. So one thing, don't forget that, right? Because this, I can easily determine what angle A is, right? I'm already provided two angles. So I can easily write the equation 82 degrees plus 72 degrees plus angle A equals 180, right? And that becomes 154. 26 plus A equals 180 degrees. Subtract 154. Subtract 154. A equals 26 degrees. So I'll just write that in there. OK? Now, when doing these types of problems, when determining, because we're going to learn the law of sines and the law of cosines. So to determine when you can use the law of sines, what you're going to want to do is you need to have a relationship. You need to have a ratio, right? Or actually a proportion. But you need to have a ratio that's filled out, meaning you have one angle and you have an opposite side, right? See, let's pretend I didn't have this. Do you guys notice how I always have here, I have a missing variable, here I have a missing variable, and here I have a missing variable, right? So I couldn't apply the law of sines. But since I know B, I now have this pretty much completed, and I can set that equal to something. So we can say that now I know the length of B, which would be 54 over the sine of 72. Now, depending on what you want to solve for, all right, we can set that up into another ratio. So depending on what you want to solve for, let's go ahead and solve for C. Does that sound OK? OK. So therefore, that will be C over the sine of 82 degrees. Now, it's everybody's favorite type of multiplying, because everybody wants to apply it to every single time you have to multiply with fractions. Cross multiplication, right? You have a proportion. So to solve a proportion, you can apply cross multiplication. And that is the only time we do cross multiplication. It is not when we multiply fractions, add fractions, subtract fractions, divide fractions. Only when you have a proportion do you apply cross multiplication. So I have 54 times the sine of 82 degrees equals the sine of 72 degrees times C. Divide by the sine of 72 degrees on both sides. I can now say that C equals 54 sine of 82 degrees all over the sine of 72 degrees, which we will be looking for in a decimal approximation. Now, if you do not have a scientific calculator or a graphing calculator, please make sure you guys have one available for your homework and as well as for your test, because it will be necessary. So I get 56.23, and we'll be rounding to the 10th. I'm sorry, to the 100th for these. So I have 56.23, and does that kind of make sense? Does that make sense? Right? Yeah. And anytime you guys are applying these, especially your word problems, you want to go, bless you, you want to go back and make sure, does that make sense? If I got 560, would that make sense? No, you'd be like, OK, no, that's not going to, that doesn't seem right. I probably punched in something wrong. All right? So, but this kind of fits away with the whole problem. So now that was for C. But now I need to figure out what A is, correct? So I kind of ran on space. I'll erase this. So now I can do the same thing. And again, I would just use your original ratio. Because let's say in case you did make a rounding error, you type something in, you probably don't want to use it. Let's say this is like small off, right? But it's wrong. So I'd be very hesitant to use this in my next ratio, even though you could say sine of 56.3 over 8, or sine of 82 degrees over this is equal to my ratio A. Always go back and use your original ratio. So in this case, I have 54 over the sine of 72 degrees equals A over the sine of 26 degrees. OK? And again, we can apply cross multiplication. Now, to save a little space, I'm going to write in what the final answer is, or the final equation. And once you guys do enough of these problems, you guys will get it. You get this too. So A is going to be 54 times the sine of 26 degrees divided by the sine of 72 degrees. Does everybody follow me with what I did? I just did like two math operations together. So then I just multiply 54 times the sine of 26 divided by the sine of 72. And in this case, I get 24.90. Ta-da. Make sense? Good? OK. So I have two examples to go for. What I like to do is give you guys an opportunity